Hey guys, it's your boy Donnie, Spellbreaker, with another episode of Donnie's Takes. Today I wanted to speak about Gnosticism versus Christianity. Now this talk is probably going to piss off a lot of people. They don't really care. To be clear, I'm going to talk about my experiences with both and my struggles with both, and the limiting factors of both, and kind of where I'm at now. And so please, if you guys find this entertaining, useful, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Your comments mean a lot. So yeah. I think this video will be very helpful for a lot of people struggling with between the two. I think a lot of people are my age and older as well have really struggled with going back and forth. I know, especially I have quite a bit, and I want to be really open about that and kind of some of the conclusions I've come to and where I am now. A large part of one of the reasons why I stopped doing podcasts is I felt like I was going down what I call a Gnostic rabbit hole, where we've done a lot of pretty amazing talks on the podcast, and if you're finding this for the first time, I recommend going back. Very interesting stuff about Howdy McCoskey, Jerry Marzinski. A lot of very fascinating talks. Tom Montauk, some of my favorite conversations. A lot of really good stuff. I'm really proud of the work that I've done so far on this podcast. I'm really proud of the community we've built. All of the support I've got, means a lot to me. But I hit a wall, and I'm just being totally honest, where I felt like I was just getting into more and more abstractions. I was getting kind of deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole of not just conspiracy, but intrigue about nature of reality. And to me, it just got to the point where, unless these things were my personal experiences, I couldn't validate or invalidate them in terms of nature of reality and things happening in the world. As well, I felt like I was on this hamster wheel of almost one-upism, of just kind of digging deeper into the next thing, from soul traps to energy harvesting to Lucian to all of these things to, demonic attack and all these things, which I think, are still very interesting. They're a part of my overall questioning of reality and the universe. But to me, it just felt like a hamster wheel, and if I'm totally honest with you, I found it honestly very overwhelming, to the point of just kind of hitting a wall, I would say, where I kind of acknowledge that there's no end to this chase, to this rabbit hole. You can infinitely seek and go deeper, and which is interesting, which is cool. But my own life and my own conclusions, I realized that, I wasn't really seeing peace in that. I wasn't really getting relief. Like, the more, I understood and studied these things, I wasn't really, it wasn't really helping me. And so that's not to say this isn't, strictly an argument for ignorance is bliss. I don't advocate for that, obviously. On this channel, we dig into a lot of deep themes, which I think are very relevant and interesting. But I think, those of the Gnostic proclivity need to be honest that, in a way, at least it was my experience, part of Gnosticism is baked in is seeking truth. And I think that's very good. This is one of the core philosophies of my podcast here. But ultimately, I think truth for truth's sake, and just seeking truth forever, I should say, is not really the goal. I think truth seeking should be a means to an end, and that end should be a fruitful life. And so I'm probably going to piss off a lot of Gnostics and a lot of Christians, because a lot of Gnostics are going to say, I'm going to piss off probably the Christians more. Because Gnostics are kind of like an overarching kind of, it's almost a blanket group in a way. But everyone's going to say that's not true Christianity or that's not true Gnosticism. Again, I don't care what you have to say. I've been through these fights enough. I'm just going to tell you again, like, how my life progressed and how it helped and hindered my life. Let's say practicing what I thought were the tenets or the acting out the underlying philosophy of both as I understand them. Oh, I got a little something here. Okay, nice. So again, with Gnosticism, I would characterize it for me personally as it's seeking knowledge, which is obviously commendable, which I think we're called to do. We're called to seek truth. It is a very I would say non-dogmatic set of practices or beliefs, in that the end goal is seeking gnosis, seeking knowledge. So what I really like about Gnosticism is, like, I'm not really wired for taboos. I'm not really wired to say, go here and no further, you can't look behind the curtain here, like, you can't understand this, this is for the big boys. The gatekeeping or monopoly on knowledge is very much something that in my core I'm against, right? And so I think that's what drives me to let's say the world of Gnosticism broadly, in that, like, hey, we can actually, we don't need the clergy to have us understand God or to commune with God. It's for all of us, and it's our right to do. And that a lot of the spiritual powers that be, organized religions, they're giving us a very limited view of reality. I think it's very obvious that the church in large part have let us down in a lot of regards. I think they've also done incredible things for the world. But yeah, I think especially churches in the last few generations have really especially let down men. And so, one thing I want to actually start digging into more is just, like, my own journey on masculinity itself, what is it to be a man, what is it to be a father, what is it to be a husband, especially in this crazy upside down world, and so, like, on that point specifically, my journey into Gnosticism, none of that was really answered for me, specifically, what it is to be a man. And I would say a lot of the men in the Gnostic space, and again, this isn't an attack on any one person, and I love all my friends that I've interviewed and everybody, but just for me, all of the people I knew who were Gnostics, I felt just didn't really have a good handle on, let's just say, they weren't a good role model for me as to what proper masculinity is, proper manifestation of masculinity. There's a lot of ambiguity between the sexes specifically. It is, you could argue Christianity or Judeo-Christianity, which I think is a trope. Anyways, it's a lot more patriarchal than Gnosticism, right? We have Sophia and all of these things. It's a lot more of an embodiment of the feminine, which I think is actually good to an extent as well. But for me, in my own worldview, I've just seen, like, my personal belief broadly is that many of the problems we're facing in society are due to weak men, and that we come from generations of weak men, and our generation, both men and women, we're called to fix this and to be the strong men. I think we're getting into the hard times, which creates the strong men, if you guys know the adage. And so for me, that's like a big part of my growth and my journey is not only growing into my manhood and masculinity and role as a father and a husband, but really challenging these norms. And yes, we've seen the destructive power of feminism, and yes, I think we could go on a tirade. I probably will do another video or series just on the failings of men broadly, but one of the things that really gravitated me towards Christianity is, well, I live out here in the country, in the boonies. One day I'll give you guys a tour of the place. But all my friends now are Christians. And not all Christians are the same, too. There's a lot of friends of mine who are Christians I really disagree with politically and on a lot of issues. But a lot of the guys I've been really starting to get along with, I would call them almost warrior Christians. And these guys I just think are champions of leading the call towards, traditional masculinity, what it means to be a leader, what it means to be compassionate, what it means to be, a man. And I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole on that. But needless to say that for me, that information specifically in Gnosticism, I don't find any of the Gnostic texts or anything really helped me navigate that in this regard. And moreover, I found the more I was going down the path of Gnosticism in my own life, I didn't really, I just didn't get a lot of peace of mind and peace of heart. Let's just put it that way. If I were to sum up Gnosticism as I understand it, it is, the Christians would call it Luciferianism. And ultimately that the core philosophy for me of Gnosticism is that like we actually do have the capacity to understand God. That we like have the duty and obligation, like it's our destiny to fully understand reality and to grow and to improve and to eventually, whether I wouldn't say this necessarily, but to have the knowledge of God and the understanding of God, and to almost eventually, I think in a subconscious way, to be like God. To me, that was kind of the manifestation of how Gnosticism was in my life. This understanding that, I was just a bit more secret knowledge away from gaining true happiness, for full understanding, for transcendence or something. And I want to just let you in on a secret. I'm 35 now, and I've gone down every rabbit hole you can imagine. I've met some very fascinating people who have bent and totally uprooted my view of reality. But the truth that no guru or anybody will tell you, which is the core truth that I've come to, is that nobody knows what the hell is going on. Full stop. Nobody knows what's going on. There's no amount of knowledge, that will change that. And that's ultimately the conclusion I've come to. That more knowledge does not equal a better life. It does to an extent, but I'm talking from a Gnostic perspective. I personally, I feel more comfortable around your average Gnostic than your average Christian, for reasons I'll get into. Mainly, I'm not one to actually adhere to strict rules, and I'm not dogmatic. I don't like hierarchy. I don't like authority generally. And, that's especially with previous manifestations of Christianity, especially organized religion generally, this doesn't bode well. So hence Gnosticism. It's almost like a rebellious spirit, right? But yeah, I think if we're honest with ourselves, I know people who know way more than me about what's going on in the world for good and evil. They have practiced many different spiritual practices, who are incredibly knowledgeable. And honestly, they still struggle. And it's not even struggle, a lot of them, I don't even see their lives as being enviable, to be honest. I see a lot of darkness in them still. I don't see I don't know. To me, one of the core parts of my philosophy in life is, Jesus saying, "You shall know them by the fruits of their labor." I just apply that to my entire life. How is, try something. How is that working out for you? See what other people are doing. How does that work out for them? What are the fruits of these actions, right? And so going down this path of Gnosticism, I've really been asking those types of questions and seeing it in my own life. And this is my story, basically, that I didn't really see. To be clear, I think there's a lot of beautiful Gnostic people, and people who I still listen to and I still like and I still appreciate and are doing good things. This isn't disparaging them at all, but I'm just being honest that a lifetime of study and practice of these different spiritual belief systems and stuff, I don't think has yielded any results. And I know that's sad. I mean, let's look at David Icke, right? David Icke has put out phenomenal works about, breaking spells and the truth of the world. He's predicted a lot of the stuff happening now 30 years ago. I mean, you can't give that guy enough credit. He's also talked about the nature of reality and how this is a prison matrix and all of this stuff. Well, David hasn't escaped the matrix. He's probably one of the most educated on these topics of anybody in the world. And presently, he just bitches about people on Twitter. He hasn't gotten remedy. He hasn't transcended things. He hasn't broken these spells or these chains. I think he probably lives maybe a much more true and authentic life than your average person, who I think is caught in a lot of these webs and mazes and mental spells. But I think if we're totally honest, let's look at the fruits of these people. Jordan Maxwell. I know people who knew him personally. He died like poor, alone. He was living on somebody's couch in a garage, is my understanding. And I would never disparage the dead, but I don't think we can really see the fruits of his knowledge seeking in terms of his life. Not being broke isn't the end all be all. I encourage a lot of people, if you're living a life that you don't like, that's not congruent with you, you're better off selling everything you have, getting in a van, and living in nature. I truly believe that, right? I don't think riches are the end all be all or material possessions, but I think Jordan was very unhappy. I don't think he lived a good life, and these are just examples of many people in these spaces promoting this kind of Gnostic, secret, esoteric lifestyle or whatever you want to call it. I haven't seen the fruits of those efforts. In fact, I've seen the opposite. And so my hard conclusion was that nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. And that's not really popular. That doesn't get you clicks. That doesn't get you views. Many people probably shut this off already. But honestly, that's just the truth. If we're honest, nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. We're kind of on our own in a way. And to me, that also kind of get to the conclusion that I actually think that we can't understand reality and God and where we are. I just think it's a fact. I don't think more knowledge leads to truth or happiness. I think to an extent, I've broken a lot of spells that have led me to create an atypical life that I think is way more blessed than maybe others I know, and I encourage that, and I want to get into that kind of stuff more. But broadly speaking, and the more you're educated about things broadly, you can apply that to the world and your level of intelligence, how you interact with the world, and for profit, and I'm not anti-knowledge, to be clear, but I'm just saying there's a certain point where knowledge doesn't fulfill us. It doesn't feed our soul. It doesn't answer these questions. And to the Gnostics' credit, and it's only mentioned a little bit in the Bible, but it's a lot more common in Gnosticism. This idea that God dwells within us. I think that is one of the main positive takes that we should take from Gnosticism. Because in Christianity, especially broadly, we have this idea that God is an external thing, totally outside of ourselves. And the Bible says that the Spirit of God dwells within us. And I believe that, I'd shared experiences earlier where I've felt chakras since I was a child. And to me, that kind of signifies my connection to Creator, to God. And Christians don't talk about that. That's, that would be seen as like witchcraft. I've had people say stuff like that, right? Having said that, though, I think Christians are closer. Like, Christianity, broadly speaking, promotes this idea of faith over knowledge. And I think there's actually a true power in faith, in actually fully saying, I don't know, in fully saying, this is outside of my control, in fully submitting to God, and praying for understanding. To me, that's just opened up new pathways into my life, which are extremely powerful. Whereas when I was a Gnostic, I still, I'm not going to take the videos down. I have videos about manifestation. And while I do think there is this weird consciousness-reality connection that we don't truly understand, that would be heresy for many Christians to speak about, I think it's there and it's real, and it's interesting to note, and it's worth looking into. But I think the issue with that, and with this idea of manifestation broadly, it almost paints this idea of the world as almost a vending machine for our desires, right? A lot of manifestation, it's like, how do I get more stuff? That's ultimately, if you look at most of the manifestation content, it's like, I want a mansion, I want a car, I want this, I want that. How do I get it? God, serve it up to me. And that's pretty vapid, And also, I became a solipsist, and it was subtle. But to me, this idea of as within, so without, I think, again, there's truth in there that I don't fully comprehend, that I've also experienced. But it's this idea that the whole universe is in your own head. I mean, I just became, I literally thought that nothing bad could happen to me. That because I was a high vibe person, that's why I was so blessed in this world. And I am very blessed. But as I mentioned before, I had probably the closest person in my life took their lives last year. Totally unexpectedly, had called me 2 hours before and then left a nice message. And it totally destroyed my life for a while. It happened 2 weeks after my kid was born, and it totally shattered my view of Gnosticism and reality. This idea that we're free from the pain, the suffering, that we can transcend that through our mind, through positive thinking, through manifestation. It totally messed me up, and I came to the conclusion that, and also a lot of Gnostics say this to an extent, but I think there's a little bit of schizophrenia there, where we acknowledge that this realm is created by the demiurge, but we also think within us we have the ability to manifest and to transcend all of it, that we can almost walk above the muck. And the truth is that we can't, that it comes for us all. And I've really embraced this idea of struggle and suffering is baked into the world. It's just a fact, and we can't overcome it. It's we can mitigate it in some ways, but I actually think the spiritual magic happens when we embrace that fully. A lot of my life, unconsciously and consciously, was spent running from pain towards pleasure, towards ease, towards comfort. But a lot of what I call this new movement, I'll call them broadly warrior Christians, who are challenging a lot of these norms, challenging a lot of the evil and emptiness of our modern world, are also really challenging a lot of these concepts. And yeah, so for me, I basically concluded that this is a fallen world. We can't transcend it. this idea of the soul trap, demiurge, whatever. Sure, but to me, I actually think the spiritual growth is in embracing the struggle, acknowledging that it's there, embracing it. Now, that's not to say some of the New Agers where it's like they say, oh, it doesn't exist, or, all of it's for naught. I think we're carbon being shaped into diamonds, and I think that is God's purpose. But I think it's a fallen world, and I think we actually have to embrace struggle and overcome it. And to me, the Christian faith, I think, embodies that a lot more than the current manifestation of Gnosticism, where a lot of Gnostics are talking about manifestation and carving out lives that they want without really a thought of the world around them. For their people, a lot of Gnostics aren't really having families. A lot of Gnostics are just kind of living their own life to the best that they can, which there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, I think we're called to duty, to sacrifice, to take up the cross that Jesus states, that we need to embrace struggle and suffering, and that we are made more through that. I know a lot of people don't like that message. I do understand the idea of the soul trap, but again, guys, like, look at the fruits of the people promoting this. Like, a lot of these soul trap people literally have said that they have some way out of this mess, that they can transcend it. They can't. Again, show me proof. Tell me I'm wrong. Like, none of these people have the answers. There's no remedy and freedom in that. But I think there is remedy and freedom in submission to God, in prayer, in the tenets and philosophy of Jesus Christ. And to me, it's just obvious, So I will say, with Christianity broadly, and let's say all spiritual things, my intuition is that there is a deeper spiritual knowledge that has been separated. Because, some Eastern thought in let's say the concept of the ego, right, and things like that, have been fundamental for me in my spiritual journey, and I still talk to people all the time about that. That's an Eastern thought. That is not a Western or Christian idea. So I do think there has been a separation of knowledge intentionally. I do not think the Bible is the unaltered Word of God. In fact, if I'm totally honest with you, I find the whole premise of Christianity in some ways very insulting. Like, the idea that in an infinite universe, the creator of the world, like Yahweh, presented himself to a select group of goat herders thousands of years ago, wrote it down, and then his son came down, to the same goat herders in a small, obscure tribe in the Middle East, and only 80 years later did people start taking notes. And, this is the basis for a belief system that we're supposed to take wholly without skepticism as the true, unadulterated Word of God. And there's endless contradictions. If you see within Christianity, just look at all of the different, denominations. Obviously, this is not a clear, coherent document that we can all agree on in terms of what God meant. It's not. It's very disorienting. It's very complex. Even the Protestant versus Catholicism. I am a Protestant by background, but starting to listen to more Catholics, and honestly, I like the idea of standardized doctrine. Because, anyways, I don't want to get into that, but needless to say, that doesn't take away the truth of the core message of Jesus Christ, and how submitting yourself to God earnestly every day, practicing self-death through prayer, changes your life for the better. I personally believe that it is, in terms of a daily spiritual practice, a lot closer to the truth than Gnosticism, right? I feel like a lot of Gnosticism, the daily practice, is an endless searching or a rabbit hole. Whereas Christianity is almost a submission to God to say, hey, I know I won't ever fully understand this. I don't fully understand your will. Guide me, and practicing selfless and humility. And I've just seen a total change in my own life doing that over Gnosticism for me personally. Now, we can get on a whole tangent about Christianity and the short pitfalls, the contradictions. Like, I'm the first to be able to tell you that. I've struggled with Christianity my whole life, but I'm just telling you from a truth perspective, I just see the core tenets as a lot, the actual practice, the daily practice, as the closest to truth that there is. And so that's kind of been my experience so far. In the end, I saw Gnosticism as a just kind of like a hamster wheel, to be honest with you. And we were just like one step away from truth and knowledge and understanding. One podcast away, one thing away from full understanding, or almost they think that you get enough Gnostic knowledge in your head and you just like disappear from this reality. I mean, maybe people are doing that. Maybe that is the truth, but I just don't see it. Again, I don't see the fruits of that labor. I do see the fruits of the labor of Christianity in people's lives. All of the Christians that I know are really trying to live lives like beyond themselves, practicing self-sacrifice, building community, helping each other over themselves. And I think, for me, when I was in the depths of my grief from my loss, the only thing that actually helped me was actually forgetting about myself and helping others. Because I went down these rabbit holes, and it was very dark. And I actually think ego death and helping others is the pathway forward. It's not self-hatred, but it's like self-forgetfulness. Through works, through helping, through prayer. Prayer is also very powerful, and it's real. Like, I encourage you all to just, almost everybody is suffering. Just pray quietly. You don't have to tell them. It's totally between you, but it works. It's powerful. It's real. And God is real. And, we could talk a lot more about the shortcomings of Christianity. I would say, broadly speaking, the Christian church, most of them I don't think believe in a living God. They don't really acknowledge evil in the world in a real way. They're not confronting that in any meaningful way. They're not really a threat to the established order. I think they've largely just a product of Western feminism and hyper-liberality and leftism. A lot is what we talked about with the problems of conservatism. But I do see this kind of emergent, post-denominational, Christ-led movement where men are just picking up the torch, and they're becoming like warriors for Jesus and warriors for truth and for God. And I think that's a great thing. And I think while I think there is a lot of truth in the Eastern thought and Gnosticism and all this, I think Europeans are wired for Christianity. It's just in our brains, right? And I think, a lot of men get kind of weird when they go down the Eastern, mysticism, Eastern thought realm. It's not really a good look, if I'm honest. Ladies, what I'm talking about. Start being like fruitarians hanging out in Thailand. It's like, whatever. It's like weird. Whereas I think Christianity, it's like we farm, we embrace struggle, we lift. We build families. Like to me, Christianity is like picking up a banner of righteousness, of truth, of standing for something. And I felt like in Gnosticism, there's a lot more moral relativity, where like you're also almost encouraged not to call out evil in a way. And again, this is an oversimplification, but this is just understandings, And so, yeah, for those who I think are struggling with this idea of Gnosticism versus Christianity, I would just really encourage you, as I did, to really seek, what are the fruits of those belief systems? How does it work for others, and how does it work for you? And I think God is real, God is living, and God will speak to you. And as you cultivate humility and daily prayer, and I think submission to God, God will light a compass, and it becomes more apparent. And I think that's the essence of faith. It's not, I think belief is not a good thing. Believing something just because somebody tells you that it's a good thing. But I think the other extreme of like endless seeking and never knowing, I found Gnosticism very disorienting, because it's just like every week you find this earth-shattering new paradigm, of a whole other, can of worms, nature of reality. Oh, I got to worry about this now. Now I got to worry about that now. Like, it's deracinating is a term, and it means like to pull up the roots, like without roots, without foundations. And that's how I felt, going down the Gnostic rabbit holes, whereas with Christianity, I feel that there is a certainty, there is a foundation. Like Jesus Christ is the in his path, the practice is a foundation. It's eternal. It's and who knows? Again, like I'll piss off a lot of Christians. Like I don't know for sure, if it's real. Like I don't think the entire Bible is literally true. I really struggle with Yahweh. Like again, I think the entire creator of the universe is like, there's a lot of dark shit in the Old Testament, and I know a lot of my Christians out here, they're actually like more Yahweh dudes than Jesus dudes. They obviously accept Christ as their Lord, but they kind of vibe with the Father Yahweh stuff. Whereas I'm kind of more in the camp of like, maybe Yahweh was not our boy, but maybe if there was such savageness and debauchery, kind of like we see today, maybe that justified some of the behaviors of Yahweh. But I just have a hard time, like I don't accept it as literally true, and in the past, when my mind, like when I went down that rabbit hole of like Christian literalists taking the whole Bible, it's literally true. It led to a lot of dark stuff too. But having said that, I think I think where I resonate with Christianity most is I believe we're called for righteousness. I do believe we all fall short. I do believe that we all need grace and forgiveness, because like I mess up horribly all the time, and I think there is a truth to the idea that we all fall short of the glory of God, and I don't think by works you can undo the harm that we've caused to other people in our lives. I think we all need to practice grace. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's been manipulated and weaponized and used to feminize men, but I think the deep beauty and truth in that is not to constantly say I'm a horrible, sinful person, but it's really acknowledging that we all fall short, and that Jesus is the North Star. His practice is like sermon on compassion is it's pretty good stuff, and I never got that with with Gnosticism. Maybe you do, and that's great. I think honestly we have to evaluate these things openly, but to me, I just think I think I've made it clear that a lot of the struggles with Gnosticism, broadly speaking, and so I would love to know what you guys think. I might dive a bit more on this, but for me, I personally hit a wall of exhaustion with like Gnostic fatigue, where there's just endless knowledge, endless rabbit holes to go down, and never enough time, and each one was very disorienting to me, and in a way upsetting to find these new truths, but none of them led to more peace for me. It led to less certainty. And, you know, as searchers, we're called to never have, you don't want to have false certainty. But I think I just came to the conclusion for me personally that there's a lot we'll never know, and more spiritual knowledge doesn't lead to peace. And I think ultimately we have to be called to like, we need peace in our lives, peace in our own heart. As well, we need to have a moral foundation, that a daily spiritual practice. And yeah, I just think a lot of the stuff, meditation is really good. But I know people who meditate 3 hours a day, and they're, it's not like they're the most high vibe, best people. I think it's a good practice. There's a lot of benefits to it, but I think we need to be still every day and get out of our heads and turn off the phones. But to me, I get more benefit out of a few minutes of devout prayer than I would meditating for hours at a time. That's just me personally, and that speaks to me, to the power of prayer. So yeah, I think, again, this is a judgment-free zone. Probably everyone's going to hate me for this, but I'm just being honest about where I'm at and the experiences both. And yeah, so I'd love to know what you guys' thoughts are. I'll probably wrap it up here, but yeah, I'm sure I actually have spoken to some of my fans privately on these issues, and I think a lot of people are really struggling today. And I don't like the idea of casting people out of, like, I know a lot of Christians that are wieners and horrible people, and I know a lot of amazing Gnostics. And again, I think we should judge people by the fruits of their labor, not like just because you say you're a Christian doesn't mean, like, I found out I have Christian friends who think it's, the, mass immigration and, all the stuff the government's doing, and digital ID is, like, totally fine, So just because you're Christian doesn't mean you're in any sort of meaningful rebellion or, so, they are ultimately labels. But what I'm trying to say is, ultimately in your own life, I think we have to be very conscious of what we're practicing, right? And, for me, Gnosticism was like an endless pursuit of truth. And all of the people that I followed, all of the people that are espousing this, I don't necessarily see the fruits of that labor in their own lives. Like, they're cool people, very interesting. I would love to hang out with them, and maybe that's enough, but I just mean, I don't see this, like, spiritual transcendence that is, like, awe-inspiring. I just see broken people, which we all are. And whereas with Christianity, I think it really acknowledges that, that brokenness that we all feel, that void that, like, can't be fixed with knowledge, can't be fixed with more knowing. That we do need grace and forgiveness, and we need to practice that. And selflessness through action will set you free and will bless you. These core tenets of Christianity, to love people. I'll give one example. I know, just a huge rant, but I had a neighbor down the road, and I can't see it from here, but anyways, I had a really bad day, and he was delivering hay for us, for our horses, and I had built a whole area fenced off to put where I want my hay to go. And the dude came in, and long story short, I told him, I want you to dump it here, and he just dumped it on the ground and looked at me. And I was so pissed because I thought he was just being a dick. I walked inside and I didn't talk to him, and I was so angry. I was so fucking mad at this guy. I thought he was just being a total dick, and yada yada yada. And so I was so angry about it, and I thought, I'm never gonna talk to this guy again. Blah blah blah. And that lasted a little while, and then through prayer, because I didn't like having this, like, anger in my heart. I just really prayed for, like, compassion towards him, because I know this guy, he has a really rough life, And anyways, circumstances arrived that I ended up having to go to his house to get some stuff. And, I got the stuff. And then in my own heart, I had forgiven him through prayer. And it was very tough for me to do because I found what he did extremely disrespectful. And I don't take disrespect very well, especially when it's on your own property. And, I saw it as like, anyways. But, I had prayed for it, and I had it in my heart, had come to peace with him. And then I only later found out that he's like, man, he's like, my truck actually has like a 12-foot arm that would have like hit your other building. And so he's like, I physically couldn't have got in there if I tried. I would have damaged your stuff. And so, I just, I dumped it there. I was actually going to come up with my machine for free later and move them for you until you like took off. But, and he's like, and also that day was one of the worst days of my life. Like my phone broke and my 2 trucks broke down. And honestly, like, we didn't even want to move your hay. We just did it because you're our neighbors and we want to take care of you. And, so here I was so angry, right? And the truth was actually that, this guy's struggling too, this guy's suffering too. And that, we're called to forgive and we're called to cultivate compassion in our own lives. And that would have been that's Christ-like to do that. And just that's an example of the beauty and the wisdom of that teaching, is that we actually don't often realize how much people are suffering. And we often judge people and treat them horribly without actually cultivating compassion in our hearts. We don't, that person could be close to wanting to harm themselves. They could have just, that mean cashier could have just found out their husband was cheating on them. People could just find out they have cancer. We don't know. And so there's this wisdom and compassion and cultivating that I think is the beauty of Christianity. So, that's it for today. Please, guys, if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe and comment down below. And let's keep the conversations going. I really hope this was helpful for you, because this has been a long journey for me. And again, I think, I still am seeking knowledge, seeking truth, but at the same time, I think these aren't remedies in themselves. Okay.